Good afternoon and welcome to the Baldwin City Candidate Forum hosted by the Baldwin City Chamber of Commerce. My name is Jenny Fish and I serve as the Chamber's events coordinator. Thank you all for being here and engaging with our local candidates to take an active role in our community. Your participation is what keeps Baldwin City connected and strong. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize Sandy Chapman. She's going to be our moderator today, and she's going to guide today's discussion and ensure each candidate has equal time to respond. Sandy's role is to keep things fair, balanced, and on schedule. A quick reminder for everyone, candidates and audience members alike, this is a respectful and neutral space. Please no interruptions, applause, or verbal reactions during any of the responses. Let's give each candidate the courtesy of being fully heard, as civility and community spirit are what makes Baldwin City great, and we want to reflect that in today's forum. Here's how the forum is going to work today. We're going to talk specifically about the City Council Candidate Forum. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the same question. There will be between 5 to 7 questions in total, depending on time. Candidates will rotate who answers each round first, and the questions were not provided in advance. Candidates, we're going to please have you step up to the podium when it's your turn to speak. And then we have a volunteer timer up front here who's going to help keep things on track. When they see a green card, it means that they've got 30 seconds left. A yellow card is 15 seconds, and red card means time is up. We will stop the candidate from talking at that time. After the City Council Forum, we'll take a short break and move to the Mayor Candidate Forum. The Mayor portion will follow the same structure. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer their question, and they'll have between 7 and 9 questions to be asked. In this round, each candidate will also have the opportunity to ask a follow-up question of the other candidate, with 1 minute in time to respond. The same timing signals will apply. Green for is 30 seconds, yellow for 15, and red to stop. This forum will be recorded and is going to be posted on the Baldwin City Chamber of Commerce website by 5 p.m. on Tuesday. If we can do it sooner, we will. Again, thank you for being here and supporting this important process. Let's keep today's conversation focused, respectful, and community-minded. With that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Sandy.
Thank you, Jenny.
And just, yeah.
All right, everyone, are we ready to get started? I promised the first question, we're starting off easy. So the first question, Susan, you'll be the first candidate to answer. You may want to switch up your seating order now, right? Yeah. All right. So the question is, why do you want to be on the City Council? If it was up to you, what is the first thing you would change in Baldwin?
I'm Susan Pitts. I've been on City Council for the last 2 consecutive terms. And thank you, Jenny and Sandy, for hosting this. I am running again because I think we have really good momentum right now. There's been a lot of positive change in Baldwin City in the last 8 years. I'm sure you guys noticed there's been a new police station that was desperately needed because of major safety issues. We have Sullivan Park now. We've developed sidewalks for safe routes to school, which was primarily funded through grants. I'd like to keep that momentum going, and I think that the next 4 years are going to be incredibly difficult. There's a lot of inflationary costs that are going to make it difficult for us to continue to operate as a city at the level that we have been without those costs reflecting on the citizens. And I know that's not what anybody wants to hear, but I think it's realistic. So I think containing those costs as much as possible is going to need to be a priority. We have a water line from Lawrence, which is our one and only source of water. And it is aging. It desperately needs to be replaced. And I have 30 seconds left. I don't even remember the second half of this question, so I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Susan. I'll repeat the question, if that will help. Why do you want to be on the city council? And if it was up to you, what is the first thing you would change in Baldwin? So Dan, we'll move on to you now.
That's all quick. First off, thanks to the Chamber for hosting this event. Glad to be here. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Riney. I'm a resident for about 10 years, or I guess a little over 10 years. I worked for 6 different municipalities over a 45-year period, ranging in size from 10,000 population up to almost 40,000. The reason I want to be on the city council is to try to provide some leadership based off of that experience. After working for a number of different elected bodies over the years, I see people who are very, very giving, very concerned about their community, but sometimes they just don't get how the system works. And I think my experience, I do know how the system works and I can provide positive things. I'm not sure I have a good concrete answer for what's the first thing I would change. I'm not sure that I would change anything right away. I think that's a little cavalier. If I could change anything about our community right now, it would be to figure out how to get our community to quit doing what I'm ashamed to admit is happening across our country, which is the division that's going on in our community. A lot of false information being fed. People are not following the facts, and because of that, there's a lot of division. And I think we all need to come together. This is a beautiful, quaint little community. Everybody here is nice. Let's be nice. And that's all I got, because he's flashing red at me. He's about to.
Thank you, Dan. All right, Peter, your turn.
Hello, everyone. Peter Wentz. I have a background in leadership in the military, and unfortunately, a lot of the missions that we meticulously plan out to a T for years, boots on the ground, ends up being completely different than everything that the 2-star generals told you, and me as a low AP5 just have to make some really hard choices and have had to make the mission successful. I don't feel like we're necessarily at the brink of disaster in Baldwin, but I do understand that a lot of people are concerned and a lot of citizens feel isolated and alienated. And I know, as somebody who's had to reach out take information from people way up here and disseminate it out to people who likely don't understand the big picture. And I'm not saying that anybody in this room aren't any of those people, but I think the community feels disjointed from a lot of the decisions that are made. And I'm not saying that that's any fault. I think it's just a sign of the times of where we are. And like Jerry just said, we have the next 4 years, I think, are going to be difficult. And when I signed up, a lot of that stuff wasn't entirely evident to me, but I wanted to give the community the opportunity to have some choices in their candidates before I left on an Army mission. And when I came back, we had the choices, and I'm very thankful for that. Everybody who stepped up for that, because I don't think that anybody who gets in to the city council is going to have an easy job in the next couple of years with the water line, with the electricity, with a lot of people feeling the effects of those financial issues that we have going on. So that is what I offer, is community outreach, community transparency, making sure that everybody feels connected in some way.
Thanks, Peter. All right, Bob.
Good afternoon. Thanks to the Chamber for this. My name is Bob Flegel. My wife and I moved here almost exactly 4 years ago. When we moved here, I moved here for a job in Overland Park. I could have lived anywhere in that area. I could have lived in Sterling. I could have lived anywhere around. We chose Baldwin. It's very important to us, and because of that, we have a definite community relationship here. I've been in business and in management for over 35 years. I've done everything from basic operations to budgets. I have my MBA. I have 2 degrees in engineering. I am a registered PE, so I'm able to review designs and drawings. We very much need to look at Baldwin. Baldwin is at a tipping point. I've heard this over and over again that there's a sustainability issue. When I went to the electrical meetings, I heard people saying, I have to move out. That's a sustainability issue. So you ask, what's the first thing I'm going to do when I'm on the council, if I'm on the council? I want to look at the plan for the city. The plan that's out there now is based on a 2023 reliability review. That's old information. This is new stuff we need to look at. To try to run this city without a very solid plan and a very solid budget that matches it is a trouble. Just you're asking for it. Last year was the first time we had pieces of the budget, departments in the budget that were cash flow negative. That's against Kansas regulations. Let me now put forth a budget proposal in 2025 that's $500,000 higher than last year. We need to address that. We need the plan. That's the first thing we know. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Last but not least, Jay.
My name is Jay King. I've lived in Baldwin for over 30 years. So I've grown up in this community, and I take a lot of pride in trying to make this community better. I don't know if there's one thing that I would change first, but my biggest concern is the water line going from Lawrence to Baldwin. It is old, and we are needing to find a smart and sustainable way to finance that. What that answer is, I don't know yet, but currently digging into that to see if there's grants, see if there's other free money that we can use for that. And to kind of piggyback on what all my candidates have said, we got to come together as a community. There's too much hate right now in our community, in my opinion, and it's not just from city council or the mayor. It goes to the school board. It goes to the superintendent. It goes any high-ranking official in this town. It seems like there's a lot of hate, and I think that's one of the biggest things we have to get rid of is the hate, because we're all here together. Okay, you guys took time out today to come and be a part of our community, and that's what we need. We all need to come together as a community. So there is a lot of difficult decisions that are going to be coming up, and they're not going to be easy ones. But when I came on council last year, I did this for my kids because I told them, if you want to see change, you got to put yourself out there. So I'm trying to set the example for my kids and make sure they do things the right way by putting myself out there. Because I can tell you right now, I am nervous. I am not a public speaker. So this is me being out of my comfort zone. So thank you and enjoy the day.
We can't hear you. None of you. If you don't use the microphone, we can't hear.
Thank you. All right, well, we've made it through the first question, so everyone can take an exhale. We'll start with Dan. You will be the first one up for the next question. And so many of you have talked about the division, the concern, the isolation. We've even heard the word hatred within our community. So let's talk a little bit about that. What actions are you going to take? And how are you going to engage residents that are feeling this way, that feel disconnected or unheard?
That is an excellent question. You know, for pretty much the last year, I've attended most all of the city council meetings just because I had retired from my job and I decided I was working towards getting involved. It saddens me that on a really interesting agenda, the city council room might have 4 or 5 citizens in attendance. I think the way to get the division ended is to get more people in that room. And that might be having more regularly scheduled forums on specific issues and topics. When the door was open to have the conversations about the electric rates, the room was full. But the room was full of anger. I think we need to have those kinds of meetings before topics become heated and antagonistic, and invite people out to discuss the regular routine things that go on. You know, the electric rates did not get where they got overnight, but when they got where they got, everyone was upset. And then they wanted to come and they wanted to talk about it. We need to have those people in the room long before it gets to that point so that everyone can talk about it.
Thank you. All right, Peter, we'll move on to you to answer actions or how you will engage residents that are feeling unheard, disconnected. How are you going to engage with this feeling of isolation and division? Yeah.
So that's something I do on a regular basis. My daily job is taking corporate ideas, going to developers who don't speak anything close to the same language as anybody at the corporate level, and trying to disseminate that information to where they can understand it, where it's successful, where the whole mission is a success. And I feel like you have to meet people where they're at. So if it's kind of like the customer's always right, the soldier, the loading is always right. If they're saying, if I'm trying to disseminate information, and they're saying, it's not working, I'm not hearing it, it's not in the way that I want it to be there. Unfortunately, as a servant to those people, and leadership is a service, it's a servanthood, I have to listen and I have to address that. And it's my job to find a solution to get that information out there in a way that connects to those people, to the customers, to whoever it is. And that's something that I embrace. I understand that service to others involves making things that I don't feel are logical, right, comfortable, but the customer is always right. And so at the end of the day, if people are saying, hey, I'm not understanding, I don't feel like I feel connected to the people in that office, then I feel like that's a problem that we need to fix, not necessarily the people. As uncomfortable as that is, and as unfun as that is for people in that office. So, yeah, that's my biggest thing. Is technology will be our friend in that situation. Also listening to what people are saying, they want that information passed out to them through. So, thank you.
All right, Bob. Actions to engage around this division and isolation.
I wish I had the answer to that problem. Division is a very difficult thing. If I had that answer, I'd be running for Congress. But part of what I've been hearing from this community is, well, first off, we have a fairly broad demographic, right? And so we need to reach everybody, from the retirees to the new kids that are coming up. But at the same time, what I've heard over and over again is an issue of transparency, an issue of honesty, and it's something we need to address as the administration. Part of that divisiveness is driven by a lack of trust. So we have to rebuild that trust. And part of that building is transparency and inclusivity, right? So we've got to bring folks, as has been said already, much more in terms of revealing stuff through meetings, like we did with the electric rates, sharing those plans. Again, we're back to planning. People want to know what we think, where do we want to take the city, and we want to know where they want us to take the city. If they don't feel like they're part of it, they're going to feel excluded. And that's just unacceptable for a town this small. We are very much on that tipping point. We have to make the decisions going forward, and the community needs to be part of that. If they don't feel they're part of it, then we're not going to be successful. Big issue is how do we make them feel it? And that was part of the question. I'm not sure. We're going to have to focus on that. I know that when I do this type of thing at work, we have to bring the team together. They have to share, they have to feel like they have input. I don't know that we always do that very effectively. So that's how I would solve it. I would move forward, try to bring the community into the administration. Thank you.
Can you hear us better now? Is that better? Okay. All right. So I think one of the biggest things that helps us with communication is social media, but at the same time, I think it hurts us because, like they said, we have a huge demographic variance. So a lot of people that are 55 and older don't always get on Facebook, don't always get on Twitter. Okay, so we need to find a way to communicate with everyone and not just say, oh, we put it out on social media, so we're good. Okay. So town hall meeting for the electric rates, I thought was wonderful because you guys did come out and show your concerns, and that's great. But I will say what Bob said, that there wasn't planning. There was planning on the electrical rates. That's why one of the reasons I wanted to step in when there was an open seat was because I knew, because I've been following, that they've been talking about raising the electrical rate for over a year. And unfortunately, not everyone watches city council meetings. And I'll be the first to admit, until I really got interested and thought about running, I didn't watch them. So that information, if you don't watch them, you don't get it. So that's how I was able to figure out that the electrical rates weren't just yanked out of the hat and just dropped on us. They've been talking about this for over a year or two and how they were gonna do this. So we need to really do a better job of making sure though that everyone has a way to get all the information, not just through technology. And one last thing, my time's running out. The way I would help with that is I'm here in the community. I try to go to as many events as possible to try to make myself in the public. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Okay, Susan, last candidate on this question.
And this is an excellent question, and it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. In the last 8 years, we've made huge strides in increasing transparency, but obviously recently it's come to light that we're not doing enough. Casey recently created a communications advisory committee, and so I volunteered to chair that committee. And we've had our first meeting, and our objective is to be better about communicating, being more transparent, and making sure that we reach all of the citizens. Like Jay said, we have a very diverse community. We have a very large population that is over 55. So social media is clearly not enough. We're working on this committee to identify our populations and the best channels to reach all of those populations. So we've only met one time, but just in that one meeting, I think we made a lot of progress, and we're going to continue to try to address how we can be better about making sure that everybody knows what's going on so that we are more connected and more informed. We don't have any more surprises. I think also, just city council members putting ourselves out there, knowing that we are reachable. You can email us, you can text me, you can stop me in the grocery store. I think just having the facts dispels a lot of the division, and I think that was the problem, is people didn't have the facts. So moving forward, we clearly need to do a better job about making sure the facts are out there and hope that this committee were able to do that.
All right, moving on to question 3. And we're going to start question 3. You guys have probably figured out the pattern. Peter, you'll be the first one up for question 3, and then go down the line. So question 3, how important is it for city leaders to model integrity by following all laws, codes, and ethical standards, both in their official duties as well as in their personal conduct?
Going along with that, it's in the military, we lead from the front. If I'm sitting there doing something, I'm telling the soldiers, hey, you know what, curfew is at 6 p.m. tonight, but they see their leadership out 6:15, 7 o'clock. That completely destroys my reputation and destroys any authority that I have. And if I expect them to follow the rules, it's out the window. That goes the same with any sort of public servant responsibility or position. Police have to be the same way. Us in the city council have to be that way. So I'd say it's of vital importance for us to represent what the standard looks like. We don't need to be in a position where we're serving the public and feel like that gets us out of any kind of reproach for our decisions and actions that are against the rules and regulations that we put out there to the public. So I don't have a whole lot else to say about that, just because I feel like it's extremely straightforward that as a leader, as somebody who is serving others, if you're trying to uphold regulations and laws that you've helped put in place, the standard has to be at the very highest of all the society. You guys should be at the very peak of what a citizen is supposed to look like in that society. So.
Thank you. Bob?
It's a very interesting question. I'm surprised in some ways because it should be easy. This is a given, at least in my world. My father taught me that when you borrow something, when you use something, you put it back better than you got it. That's the way my generation grew up. I would expect that of anybody in a public office. I would expect that of anybody in a leadership role. We hear the same things in my church. If you're going to be a deacon, you have to have a certain level of integrity. This question is one that should be perfected. If we find leaders, well, we see it now in international politics. We see it now in international politics. The integrity has to be unquestionable. You can't do things that your public expects not to be done. It's beyond my imagination. I would ask the same. I mean, would you expect something of your family member, of your pastor, of your teacher? We expect this all of people who are in power, who are in leadership, who are in teaching positions. It's our responsibility. I'm a bit confused in some ways. It's the way I live. It's the way we all should live. I think if we all lived that way, we wouldn't have to answer this question in precedence. I mean, we would be getting along together much better than we are now, wouldn't we? Honesty is important. We need to see that from our city administration, from our council members, and right up to the president. Thank you.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you said. As public servants, we are held to a higher standard. Luckily for me, I coached in this district for over 16 years, so I've already been in practice of that. We can't go out and do stupid things. We can't go out and do things that are breaking the law or anything. And even if it's not breaking the law, it still might be wrong, and we gotta know better when that is wrong, because we, as public servants, are in the public eye, and luckily, my full-time job, I work for the Baldwin Recreation, so I'm in the public eye already. So I know that we have to act a certain way, and it all goes back to my kids. I have to act a certain way to set a great example for my kids and how I want them to act as adults. So that's what it all comes back to me. We are held to a higher standard, and I want to set a high standard for my kids and show them there is a certain way to act and a certain way not to act. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. All right, Susan.
Honesty and integrity are definitely traits I would expect in any of my civic leaders, so I am obviously going to have those same traits, or I wouldn't even run for city council. We definitely are held to a higher standard, and it shouldn't be difficult if you're running this position to be able to maintain that integrity. Honesty is such a critical component of this job. And I think people see through it if you're not. So I absolutely.
All right, Dan.
It kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier about the divisiveness in our community, kind of in our country. I, like several of these folks have said, I kind of just made this as a question. I mean, I'm not going to stand up here. I don't think anyone's going to stand up here and tell you that I'm running a campaign of dishonesty and mistrust. That's not who I am. That's not who any of these people are. And I would hope that, it should be a non-issue to that question. I don't know whether I don't know if I need to stand here as a candidate and vouch for my own integrity. I think you'll find it if you follow me. You'll see it's there. You know, like several people said, I had a leadership role throughout my career. As I mentioned, I worked for 6 different communities, and I was constantly reminding people on my staff. They'd say, "Who's it we work for?" And some of the newer ones would say, "Well, we work for you, boss." And some of them would say, "Well, we work for the council and the mayor. We work for the city manager." And I said, "No, you have 36,000 bosses, and they're all watching. Behave appropriately." And that's just how I think life should be. Sorry.
Thanks, Dan. All right, for our 4th question, we're going to turn back to some of the issues that you all spoke about with our first question. And so, Bob, you're going to be the first one up here. And so you guys spoke about some really big issues that are coming up in the next 4 years. And Susan, I even think you're the first one that said the next 4 years are going to be hard. And we've also had, I think most of you have talked about planning. We need a plan. So let's talk about your personal plan and your personal stance about managing city spending responsibly. How do you think about doing that, protecting the taxpayers from inflationary pressures, more tax increases for those of our community that are on fixed income? And how do you maintain these essential services? It seems like you have a triad here that has to find some balance. And so let's talk a little bit about how you see that playing out.
Wow, that's a lot to cover. There are a lot of challenges, particularly from a fiduciary aspect of the city. I look at it, and frankly, I'm seeing it all the way through to corporate. I do the very same things. We are under the same pressures. Inflation goes up, profits don't go down, or don't go up in the same amount, so we've got to figure out how to be more efficient. As inflation comes in, it's not a question of having more money, it's a question of becoming more efficient. How do we better use the resources we have? We don't have the luxury of, this would be nice. This would be nice is not an option. Sustainability in this tipping point is very key. We go back and look line by line at each one of those items in that budget. Why do we lease police vehicles for $86,000 a year? I'm not sure. I need to ask that question. Every line item in that budget needs to be reviewed. Our budget went up by $500,000 this year into 2025. That's the proposed.
And yet, what's the reasoning for it? It needs to go back and be examined. I do this on a corporate basis. I do this on a location basis in our company. We need to do it here. We need to handle it just as if it was our checkbook, because it is our checkbook. 4,700 people own this checkbook, and we need to guide it. It's going to be a difficult thing, and it's going to hurt. Kansas right now pays 7% over the national average for electricity. Smaller towns like ours pay more, but we didn't prepare for that. Again, we're back to the plan, right? We should have been planning for that all along, and we have it coming up with the water line. So that plan needs to be put into place. That budget needs to be anticipated, and there have to be some cuts administratively throughout the tech city, and we need to manage our money better.
Thanks, Bob. Jay?
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about some future, or some things that are coming our way. There are going to be hardships in the future, right? There's the water line, there's electricity rates, we have inflation. How do you plan to manage the city spending, and as well as to avoid large property tax increases and maintain essential services? It's kind of a balancing act.
We just have to be smart with our budget and take into account, like Bob said, all 4,700 of you guys into account. It's not, every decision we make affects everyone. And we have to find ways to make the right decisions that benefit every single person in this community, not just a certain group or a certain demographic. We gotta take into account that there's people on fixed incomes, and we gotta take into account that times are rough right now for a lot more people than there were 5 years ago. And we just have to be very diligent in working on the budget and making sure that we do what's right for the community as a whole. Like for the water line, for instance, we have to find a way to do that with the least amount of impact on your guys' checkbooks, because that's very important to me. And that goes the same with the electric rates. We have to find a way. And if it does mean cutting a few things to make sure that you guys don't feel that impact anymore, then that's what we have to do. And we have started doing that. It's in the beginning stages, but I'll go back to what Bob said about the electrical rate. There was a plan in place, and it was not just thrown out there and with a dart and let's see what sticks. Okay, the current council, the mayor, we have taken everything into consideration and trying to do what is best for this community as a whole. Were there people that were upset? Yes, and I take that very seriously. And that is why on one of the last rates, I voted no for it. Thank you.
You guys are testing me this afternoon. So in light of all the challenges that you guys have spoken about, and we spoke about planning, how do you plan to manage city spending responsibly to avoid large property tax increases and still maintain essential services and infrastructure?
That's going to be our biggest challenge the next 4 years for sure. Like I said, we've got some major projects coming up. We have to look at this water line. And we've got brick streets that desperately need to be replaced. And I don't think there's any feasible way for us as a community to fund these types of projects. So being resourceful and looking for grants and other financing is going to be key. It's really the only way for us to fund these types of projects, much like when we funded our sidewalks. So resourcefulness and obviously, continuously analyzing the budget and reducing any fluff, which honestly, we're running pretty bare bones as it is. It's a city, so there's not really a lot of fluff, but obviously there's not going to be any fun projects, I think, these next 4 years. It's going to be honestly, why not running? It's not going to be fun. It's going to be tough. So resourcefulness, I think, is going to be key.
Thanks, Susan. Dan?
Yeah, I think, it's a good idea, mentioned by the people sitting down behind me. I think we need to continue to be diligent in watching our spending, just like you all are, and I am, my wife is at home. I think we need to look for some other forms of funding, because we get pretty mired down in what our utility rates are and what our tax rates are. You know, that water line is the number one issue. We need to be doing everything we can to get all the grant money possible to put that together. The other thing, my approach to that water line is, and that's the business I was in, it scares me, that water line is as old and as antiquated as it is. And all the conversation is, we need to replace that water line for water. We'll run out of water. That is an absolute true statement. But my approach is, where else could we get water? What other sources do we have for water? Do we have a backup right now if that line did fail tomorrow? There's a lot more to that than just, where's the money come from to put in that line? Same hole in the ground. We need to look at some other holes in the ground. That's all I have.
I'll save you the breath.
Thank you.
So that's one of the things we understand about the next 4 years, is that it's not a super fun position for any of us to be in, including the community. There's a lot of tough decisions that are going to be made, and all I can say, I don't have a ton of experience in the public eye, in public service, dealing with that, but I can look at it from the same way that everybody else who owns a household has a family to look at it. The first thing you do is you say, how can we make ourselves more efficient? I know that my wife and my kids could probably tell you I'm kind of exhausted when it comes to turning off the lights when you're not using it. Doing all the things that are not super fun, not super exciting for the family, or remember to turn off the TVs when you're done, but it starts with being more efficient, like I think Bob brought that up. But efficiency is key. And the next thing is you also want to look at if there's any outside funding. Is there a way for us to bring in grant money? Is there a way for us to qualify for something as a small community to get some help? Because otherwise, the last part is it falls on us. It falls on how intelligently we can come up with solutions. I don't know what all the different options are as far as water lines. I don't know if water for more is the only option. There's a water line that goes from Douglas County into Franklin County, right next to the property we used to own. Is that an option for us to tap into? I don't know, but that comes from well water, so I'm not sure if the community would even be excited about some of the well water being tapped into, or the groundwater being tapped into in order for the city to survive. But those kind of decisions and conversations need to happen, and it comes from community. 15 seconds. It comes from us first to see if we can find out any efficient options, grant money, and then it goes to the community from there. If we don't have any other solutions, we all need to work together as a team to make it successful.
All right, thank you. While we're on the topic of planning and priorities, let's talk about mental health needs. And so, Jay, we're going to start with you with this question. How will you prioritize mental health needs of this community?
Well, for mental health, I think it comes back to being a good community and having community members checking on other community members and making sure if we see someone that looks like they're struggling or looks like they're having a hard time, not attacking them, putting your arm around them, making sure, asking them, are you okay? Make it a safe space. We need to make this community a safe space for people that are struggling, to not make it feel like you're being blackballed because you have a mental illness or or you're struggling with something. Because I can guarantee you probably everyone in our community is struggling with something. And I think our community has good support systems right now. I know our youth have great support systems in the school district. We have tons of mental health professionals that have businesses in our community. But it just comes back down to being kind and generous and being respectful of everyone and making everyone feel like they have a voice. And if they want to use their voice, not just telling them, well, that's a dumb idea, or shooting them down. It's making them feel like they were heard and just making everyone feel like they are a part of our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. All right, Susan, let's talk about mental health.
I think as a city council member, the best ways to support mental health in our community are, number one, just doing everything we can to create a more connected community, which we've talked about those efforts previously. Also, I think supporting programs with the library, with the chamber, with the Lumberyard Art Center, any type of programs that bring us together as a community, I think is going to help us each be more compassionate to one another and hopefully reduce some of that divisiveness that definitely contributes to mental health issues. As city council members, I think we just need to constantly set a good example as far as compassion goes and being reachable. I think that's, primarily what we can do, just creating a more connected environment.
Thanks, Susan. All right, Dan, how will you prioritize the mental health needs of this community?
I think first off, as Jay and Susan both said, because a community, we need to come together and be a lot more compassionate. What's the saying? See something, say something. Like Jay was saying, ask people. I think as far as mental health in today's society gets a lot of conversation. I don't know about all of you. I'm not an expert on mental health. I know there's a lot of things that fall under the topic of mental health that I'm not aware of. I think as a city council member, what my responsibility would be is to see whether it's through what kind of outreach that you and I get educated in what those needs are, and then we move forward with the right. Right now, I don't feel qualified to be able to say, oh, we need to have this for mental health or that for mental health. I think we need education about mental health and then move forward from there.
All right, so this is a very, I take this subject very personally. Sorry, I'm going to compose myself. So I have, some anxiety from military stuff that happened. I have some abuse that happened to me in the military, and there's a lot of emotional things that I have to overcome in my daily life on a regular basis, as you can see. So mental health is a big, big thing for me. I think that growing up in the 80s with ADHD, with parents who said, we're not going to ever get you diagnosed. The stigma that would be put on you in the schools and, it was going to change your whole life. It's going to make things very, very dark and negative for you. And the unfortunate outcome of that is that I suffered in school. I was horrible in school. It wasn't because I wanted to be. It wasn't because I wasn't intelligent. It was because the resources weren't there, and there wasn't a community that supported that at the time. But I think that Baldwin actually does a fairly good job of addressing a lot of those mental health concerns. My wife actually works at one of the mental health outlets here in town that I think is an absolutely beautiful one. I think we have a lot of resources here through the yoga. We have a lot of community exercise programs. We have a lot of resources out there. And I think that what we need to do as a community is probably get a little bit better at, I think us in the public service, if I do get elected, can also be a part of that, connecting people who need help to the right resources. Sorry. Am I done? Okay. So, but getting people connected to the right resources, because I really feel like we have it. That's one of the things we love about Baldwin is there's so many different outlets for people that from diverse backgrounds to come together and feel like they are accepted and they have a right to be here. So maybe just getting better connected into that.
All right, Bob.
I hesitate to pick this up because I tend to walk around. This is a hard one, really hard one. First, let me start by saying, Baldwin City, since I've been here, you should feel good about your mental health of the city. I've lived west, and we struggled with transients and all kinds of individuals that you didn't feel safe. I've never, ever felt unsafe in this town. I think since I got here, I've seen one transient. Mental health is about belonging. I've heard excellent ideas up here, fantastic ideas, but how do we make those happen? As a council member, that's going to be difficult. The only way a council can really help is to evaluate community services and fund those services. But we all can help that by listening, by paying attention to our people around us, by being a member of the community. This community segregates itself. I saw things on Facebook recently about a gentleman running around questionable. And the poor police, they have to do mental health. That's not their profession. How do we help them? I'm not quite sure. But it's definitely one of the things as a council we need to probably look at. What services can we make available? What services can the state help us make available? I don't know. It's definitely something that needs to be addressed. What I felt so far here in Baldwin is a pretty strong community that listens. If you want to sit down and talk to somebody, and I absolutely love to this. I was talking to Tammy that does the watermelons the other day outside of Sonic, and she told me all about her life and how her struggles were. And it was more important to her that I just listened than I made any comment or any judgment. And that's what we need to do. Listen. Thank you.
All right, we have 2 questions left. Susan, we're coming back to you to start off with this question. So we've talked a little bit about pressing needs, prioritization. We've even talked about how everyone feels about integrity and role modeling integrity. But let's talk a little bit about the relationship and the interactions with the council itself. And so what areas of improvement do you see within the current council that you hope to strengthen or correct?
Luckily, we have a really good, you guys hear me okay? Okay. Luckily, right now, we have a really good council. I think we have, we all communicate well. We obviously don't agree on every topic, but that's how it's designed to be. So, but when we do disagree, we do so diplomatically. I don't know that there's anything that really changed. I think we communicate well. We work together well in our committees that we're on. I am a little sad that I don't see another female up here. But, you know, I think having a couple of 2 females on city council is nice. And I think just everybody maintaining a level head and being diplomatic. It's easy to get fired up and become very passionate on certain topics. You don't run for city council unless you're really passionate about Baldwin City, and it's very easy to let that passion fuel anger. So just keeping a level head and being able to talk through things diplomatically, I think is key, and it's the best and the quickest way to come to decisions together.
Thank you. Okay, Dan, what areas of improvement do you see within the current council that you hope to strengthen or correct?
Yeah, well, you got the incumbent answer. My experience with this current council is that, as I said before, I attended all the council meetings for about the last year. I also am a non-elected appointed member of the Public Works and Utilities Committee, which I failed to tell you earlier. And I attend those meetings as well as some of the other committee meetings. And frankly, this particular council in Baldwin City interacts and works together very well. I don't see any poor communication. As Susan said, there are times when they don't agree, but they agree to disagree, or they try to sway one another's opinions with facts. And that's the way it should work. I think it works well. I'm always impressed with how well they do work together. And I would certainly hope to continue that. It's all about communication, but I think they all work very well together. I've seen in council meetings where a particular topic came up, and let's say the majority of the people wanted outcome A, several wanted outcome B. The outcome B stated the facts, said why it was, and swayed the other ones to come that way. And that deserves pause when we see that happen. That's how this is supposed to work. I don't know if anything particularly needs to change.
Okay, Peter?
I think I'll make it pretty short and simple. As far as what they do in the city council as a group, I don't have a whole lot of improvements that I think that they need to make. The fact that they're working together, they're not doing what a lot of the community has done, which is, get very upset, very angry at each other. That even in these tough situations, even if it doesn't look like that means that they're passionate about something from the community standpoint, that's also what's expected of a leader, is that even if you have a very passionate position on something, that doesn't need to be something that you show in the public eye, maybe behind closed doors. That can happen, but I think that's unprofessional. I think we need to keep it professional. I think they do a good job of that. So I don't have a whole lot of things that I would say they need to change within the community or within the council.
What would I change in the way the council interacts? I've watched many of the council meetings as well. What I've seen is it works fairly well. It works just as any other organization I've been involved in. I'm involved in one now up in Canada where I've got to have Zoom meetings and we have to make these kind of decisions. The most important thing is that when you leave that room, you all are on board. You can't leave with somebody in the background going, yeah, I didn't do what I wanted, so I'm going to work. They need it. I'm going to work behind the scenes. I haven't seen that with this council, and I appreciate that. And I would like to maintain that very function. It's all about facts. It's all about data. It's all about what you're presenting. And if you present your argument and you're wrong, you have to be able to go with that. If you can't follow with the group, then I would struggle that you've got the integrity to be a council person. So far, I've seen very good things out of these people in terms of working together. This is really what's expected. That's why we're all here. We're here to come and work together. I've worked with people across the world in Singapore remotely. It's a talent, yes, but it's also something that's expected at this level. We need to do it, and it's part of the expectation. Thank you.
I feel we all have to have a very open mind and a professional respect for one another, because we all come from different backgrounds and we're not going to agree on everything. But what we have to do is give every single member of our council a professional courtesy and respect, and let them give their opinion and make sure we're listening to everyone's opinion, so that when we do have big time issues that we're voting on, we all feel comfortable to give our own opinions and not be afraid to speak our mind. And we've had one vote where I voted against everyone, but I can tell you with the professional respect out of all the other council members that I didn't get any backlash. I didn't get any sort of negative feedback or why did you do this? Why did you do that? Because they're all very professional servants of the public. And I think that's what we basically have to do is just keep a very open mind and respect one another. And it all comes back to community. It all comes back to integrity. If you're a good human being, you're going to be a good council member. And you just have to keep respecting everyone as individuals.
Thank you. Last question. Are you guys ready? All right, Dan, we'll start with you on this one. We're going to bring it back to each of you individually. And I want you to talk about how your individual strengths and skills and experience are going to prepare you to be the best candidate for the upcoming challenges and priorities that are in front of the City Council.
The slippery slope question. I told you before, I have 45 years of experience working for municipalities. This is dangerous for me to tell you. I took a job with the community because they needed to build a new wastewater plant, and they were excited to do so. It was a $72 million project. I took the job. I got there. I took the job in 2008. I found out that the EPA had told them in 1993 they had to do this. They ignored it. They did not raise their rates that whole time. They went from the lowest rates in that state to the highest in 18 months. Going to target other me because I was the face of that project. That kind of thing gave me the experience to understand that although it might be painful, rates will go up. We've seen that, they do. But they need to go up properly. Those decisions have to be made well informed with all the facts. I'm not going to stand here and criticize the current council for anything they've done. Would I have looked at the current rate changes that were made differently? Probably. May have had the same outcome. I don't know. I don't have all those facts in front of me. But the reality is, I've been there, I've lived it. I've worked for cities. I know how cities work. I know how the budget works. I know what it takes to provide the services that we're all extremely used to having. And they're good services. And somebody said, they've never felt unsafe in this community. That's not by accident. Anyway, I'm getting flashed red here.
Thanks, Dan. Let's move on to Peter.
All right, I think the number one thing that drove me to this in the first place was just service to others. I always sometimes I have actually tried to get out of being of service to others, and for some reason the universe has always put me right back in an uncomfortable spot where I had a lot more responsibility and authority on my shoulders than I ever would even hoped for. This is not the same situation. I did volunteer for this, sort of knowing everything that I was getting into, but at the time I went and put in my candidacy for this, there was nobody else who publicly came out and said, as far as I know, that they were going to go for it. And I had a military mission in the beginning of May that was probably going to keep me through the deadline of putting in my submission in June. So I went for it. It's not because I wasn't willing to take on whatever life is going to throw at me in this position, but because I have been there before. I've been a leader, whether or not I wanted to or not. I provide good solutions. I'm a very rational person, And I have made things work that seemed like they were just gonna fall completely apart. And I'm not afraid to step in the face of a 2-star general and tell them your plan that you planned out for last year, boots on the ground, was not successful. It was never going to be successful. I changed it as a lowly level E5 sergeant. And I had never had one of those people come back and say that they were upset with me because they got boots on the ground. They looked at the scenario that I got put into and they said, yeah, no, actually, I commend you for being willing to step up and make rational and logical changes to make this successful. So that's what I plan to do in this position. And I feel like my background, both civilian and military, make me more than qualified for that. So.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, Bob, let's talk about how your strengths, skills, and experience prepare you to be the best candidate for the challenges that lie ahead.
Okay. 35 years as an engineer, through all different projects, let's say. I put in pipelines, I put in power lines, I put in mines. I've done budgets in excess of $300 million a year for a power company. I've done almost all of that when I was in my younger years. Now my motto is, I know things and I fix stuff. And that's what I want to do for this. I came into this community thinking, I've seen a lot of this stuff. I have the experience. I would like to give some of it back. I would like to give some of what I've learned, some of what I know, some of how I can help. I don't really have a dog in this fight. I don't have a business in this community, but I live in this community and I care about this community. And I see so much potential that we could, if you will, sharpen the blade a little bit and be a little bit more precise. That we could do the thinking beforehand. Before we spend your money, we should spend a lot more time looking at what the options are. I just see that excellence as a potential